Welcome to the landing page of Community Scale Emission Inventory Data and Story Maps for AB617 communities. Our page has four main components: Story Maps and Data Access, Community Emission Reduction Plan, Community Concerns and Feedback, and FAQ and Tutorials component. You can quickly access community scale emission inventory information by selecting either the Story Maps and Data Access component for interactive mapping display of the data, or the Community Emission Reduction Plan component for emission inventory information in static or portable document. If you wish to submit air pollution concerns to your community, you can select the Community Concern and Feedback component. And lastly, if you wish to explore commonly asked questions or video tutorials about our tool, you can select the FAQ and Tutorial component. We also have an online survey form if you wish to submit your feedback about your user experience of the platform, suggest some functionalities of our tool, or ask general questions you may have. Selecting the Story Maps and Data Access component launches a new page entailing a search box for data, Story Maps or the storytelling elements of community scale emission inventory for each of the AB617 community, a dashboard of community emission projections, and links to other relevant resources. Scrolling back up, let's select a story map for the international border community. This opens to the story maps of that community, which has storytelling elements about what an emission inventory is, some background on air pollution, including pollutants and its potential health effects, emission source descriptions such as stationary sources, area-wide sources, on-road mobile sources, and off-road mobile sources. We also have a description of the importance of emission inventory as the foundation of air quality management, the description of the AB617 community, and lastly, the emission inventory application displaying the summarized community emission inventory in maps and charts. A user will be greeted with a splash screen that gives instruction on how to use the mapping application. Once you select the OK button, you can start interacting with the application. The Emission Inventory Mapping application has 6 interactive tabs: an overall tab encompassing community-wide total emissions for all sources, and a separate tab for the emissions by major air pollution sources: stationary, area-wide, on-road mobile, and off-road mobile sources. And lastly, the Community Toxics Overview. All the tabs, except for the Community Toxics Overview, have a consistent layout and presentation for the user to navigate. The left panel contains a list of pollutant feature layers rendered on the middle panel or the map panel. The map panel displays the 1x1 km² grids of pollutant, for example showing NOx emissions and locations of sensitive receptors such as school and healthcare facilities. Users can interact on the map to know what source and its emission estimates occur locally by selecting the colored grids. This will pop a window showing the NOx emissions for that grid and the breakdown of emissions by source categories. The darkest grids represent the top 20% of the emissions within the community. As the color lightens, the grids show the next 20% of emissions until you reach the lightest corresponding the bottom of 20% of emissions. We also have map widgets available for user to use on the map. is, for example, a search tool to find place on a map, base map options for user to change the background maps, a measure tool to find distance between the features on the map, or even finding the your current locations on a map. Lastly, the right panel of this layout shows the total emissions in the community for a few pollutants by emission sources. The Community Toxics Overview tab includes options to display pie charts of toxics, either directly by mass emissions or as toxicity-weighted emissions using cancer and non-cancer chronic and non-cancer acute health values. We also provide hyperlinks at the bottom of this application, such as a feedback form or survey form that enables users to submit input about air pollution or concerns in the community, a link to forecasted emissions, and a link to emission source methodology. Selecting any of these options launches to the page of interest. For example, selecting forecasted emissions will take you back to the story map and data access page. Scrolling down on that page, as mentioned earlier, we have a dashboard displaying forecasted emissions by community, pollutant, source, and year. Let's say selecting Arvin-Lamont community. NOx for criteria pollutant, 1,3-butadiene for toxic air contaminant. The emission values on the charts get populated, displaying projected emissions for 5 and 10 years from when the SERP is adopted. This data informs the user of how pollutant emissions by source change in the future years due to the district rules and CARB regulations. To further enable accessibility and transparency, our platform provides a Spanish version of our tool. Also enable users to search and download data. This can be done by selecting through the hamburger icon on the top left, or selecting the microlens icon on the top right. By selecting the data, this opens a page with a list of data for download or sharing to other social media platforms. On behalf of the Community Emission Inventory team, thank you for listening, and we welcome comments you may have to improve our Community StoryMaps tool.